Quick question before we start. If you could watch every possible outcome of a choice before you made it, would you actually want to? Hold on to that thought. The screen went blank on December 21st, 2012. Not glitching, not fading out slowly. According to the man who says he watched it happen, a machine that had spent years showing possible futures just stopped. Here's a quick catch up if you missed part 1. A classified device called Project Looking Glass allegedly showed probable futures. Every future it showed led to the same date. Here's what happens next. I'll be honest with you, some of what's in tonight's episode sat with me longer than I expected while I was putting it together. So I want to walk you through it properly, the way I would tell it to someone sitting across from me, not just read it at you. 3 things tonight. What that blank screen might actually mean. A real physics idea that makes the blackout even stranger than it sounds. And a claim near the end about who else might have been watching that date roll around. 1, most retellings of this story skip completely. There's a vote coming too, about halfway through. Get your answer in before I show you where this goes. Let's start with the room. A screen that always shows something up until now. Now it shows them nothing. If a machine can show probable futures, and every future leads to that one point, that's strange. But at least it's still telling you something. A blank screen is a different problem. Either the future past that date genuinely hasn't been decided yet, or it has been decided and something wouldn't let them see it. Berry says the people in that room split over which one was worse, and here's the part that gets lost in most versions of the story. Either way, the machine had just hit a wall, and that wall had a date on it. Now the story takes a turn. And I want to say this up front because it's the first of 3 moments tonight where I'm going to give you the plain, ordinary version before the strange one. This next idea comes straight out of real physics. Nobody built it for this story. Back in 1957, a physicist named Hugh Everett came up with something called the many worlds interpretation. The idea is simple to say and hard to sit with. When something at the quantum level has more than one possible outcome, reality doesn't just pick one, it splits. Both outcomes happen in branches that can't see each other anymore. That's a real idea. Plenty of working physicists take it seriously, right alongside other competing ideas about the same underlying maths. That's the kind of thought that used to make the world feel huge when we were kids, before we learned to shrink everything down to what we could prove. I don't think there's anything wrong with letting it feel big again just for a minute. Now take that idea and stretch it out as far as this story will allow. If Looking Glass really was picking up on branching probability, then convergence isn't a wall, it's a fork. And if that's true, the machine didn't fail. It did exactly what it was built to do, right up until the thing it was tracking stopped being one thing. There's a thought experiment that grew straight out of Everett's idea, and physics has been arguing about it for decades. It's part of something called quantum immortality theory. Here's the idea in plain terms. If every possible outcome really does happen somewhere, then any moment where your survival comes down to pure chance always has to branch where you make it through. And because you can only ever experience being alive, never the branch where you're not, your own awareness, the argument goes, should always land on the branch where you made it. Now, where does actual physics land on this? Most physicists don't buy it as a real practical claim. It's a thought experiment about what many worlds implies if you push it hard enough, not an accepted theory. And people in the field have said outright, don't let this idea guide any real decision in your life. If your awareness only ever continues on the branch where you exist to notice it, a convergence point wouldn't feel like a machine going blind. It'd feel like nothing happening at all. You just keep living in whichever branch you are already in, with zero memory of the branches you're not. Which means the blackout wasn't the machine losing the future. It was the future splitting into pieces the machine couldn't treat as one thing anymore, while everyone alive just kept walking forward, feeling like nothing unusual had happened at all. If that one's sitting a bit strange right now, good. That's the right reaction. And if you want to see more episodes like this one, make sure to hit like on this video. It helps us find other people tuning into the same idea. Before we go any further, here's the fork this story eventually puts in front of anyone who follows it seriously. Either the convergence was a natural bottleneck, the kind that shows up whenever a bunch of separate threads happen to funnel through the one narrow gate, or it wasn't natural at all. The second option is where this gets uncomfortable. That's where we're headed to next. If timelines really did branch at the 2012 convergence, what do you think decided which branch we ended up on? Was it A, pure chance? Was it possibly B, collective human choices? Or C, something intervened deliberately? Was it D, nothing branched? It's one continuous timeline. Or was it E, I don't think any of this happened? Let's try something different here and get your vote in early. I'll come back to this once you've heard the rest. This is the part of the story that goes furthest, so let's go there properly and tell it straight. There's a version of this story that doesn't stop at the timeline split. It says the split wasn't an accident, that whatever caused every future to funnel towards this date was closer to a deliberate push. A pressure point built or exploited by someone or something that wanted humanity herded through one specific gate instead of left to wander into whatever it would have reached on its own. Who's doing the pushing depends on which version you're following. Some point back to the same non-human origin claimed for the hardware in part 1. Others describe something vaguer, an intelligence sitting outside of the timeline altogether, able to nudge outcomes from a place no human and no human machine can reach. Here's the detail that sticks with people. A manufactured bottleneck and a real natural one look exactly the same from the inside. If you're standing in the funnel, you can't tell which one you're in. Here's the thread that loops us back to where part 1 left off. If Looking Glass's hardware really wasn't built by human hands, and that claim goes back to Bill Hamilton's research and Berish's own account of reverse-engineered tech, then the people in that room might not have been the only ones watching 2012 arrive. They might have just been the only human ones. If something built that hardware, and that something had a reason to care where humanity ended up after 2012, then the convergence wasn't a test result. It was a checkpoint. And a checkpoint means someone's standing on the other side of it, watching who makes it through. Earlier I asked you what decided which branch we ended up on. Here's what the question was really getting at. If you pick C, if something intervened, the checkpoint idea you just heard is exactly what that looks like from the inside. Vote now if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments, what's the smallest thing in your own life, a detail, a date, a memory that makes you unsure which branch you're actually standing in? Before my last word, here's the honest accounting. Everything you heard tonight, the blackout, the branching, the manufactured event idea, the checkpoint, comes from testimony built on top of one man's account, with 2 decades of interpretation stacked on top. None of it's independently documented. No second witness. The manufactured event idea specifically comes from the community around this story, not from Berish's original testimony. What's actually real? Many worlds is a genuine, seriously debated idea in physics. Nobody made it up for this story. Quantum immortality is a real thought experiment worked out properly by Max Tegmark. And physicists are clear that it's a useful way to think about many worlds, not something they'll call true. Everything connecting those real ideas to Berish, to Looking Glass, to December 2012 specifically, that's interpretation. Some of it his. Most of it added by researchers and audiences over 20 years of retelling. That doesn't mean throw it out. It means knowing which part of tonight was documented physics and which was one man's story with 20 years of speculation built on top. And if new witnesses show up, or new documents, or anything that changes this picture, we'll come back and tell you. That's how we do things here. We're figuring this out in the open together, and being wrong for a while isn't the same as staying wrong. Back in part 1, I asked what we would actually do with a technology like this if it turned out to be real. Whether foresight and control ended up being the same thing, the moment one side has it. I still think that's the right question, but finishing the story left me with the smaller version of it. The unsettling part of Looking Glass was never really, can a machine predict the future? It's that watching something can change it. And that's not just something that sounds true in a UFO story. You can watch it happen in a lab. Fire particles of light at a barrier with 2 narrow slits cut in it, and left alone, they build up a pattern behind it. The kind you'd only get from a wave, passing through both slits at once. But set up equipment to check which slit each particle actually goes through, and the pattern disappears. It starts acting like individual particles instead. The simple act of measuring it changes what it does. Physicists are careful about what the experiment proves. It's the physical act of measuring that disturbs the system, not you wanting to look hard enough to bend reality. But even without the mysticism, something genuinely strange is right there, and nobody disputes it. In a system delicate enough, being observed changes the outcome. Now, for what it's worth, and this is just me, not the evidence, I don't think this one belongs in the fiction pile. Not yet, maybe not ever. Here's my thinking. Looking Glass supposedly comes out of S4, the same facility Bob Lazar put on the map back in 1989. It took decades before Lazar's story got taken seriously enough to actually be looked into properly. Decades before it went from "that guy's lying" to something researchers, journalists, a big part of the wider disclosure conversation now treat as genuinely worth digging into. And I'll go a step further than I usually do here, because I don't think there's much point to sitting on an opinion once I've actually formed one. I believe Bob Lazar. I think what he described seeing and working on at S4 was real. That's a big part of why this Looking Glass story caught me in the first place. It comes out of the same building, the same handful of years, and the same buried world. And the closer we get to whatever real disclosure looks like, my honest guess is we're going to keep bumping into things that don't fit into our current picture of reality, or time, or cause and effect. Future viewing tech might be one of them. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying I'm not ready to rule it out the way I may have a few years back. What I want before I put real weight behind this is more. More witnesses, more paper trail, something beyond one man and the people who believe him. Here's where I land. Genuinely possible and seriously unproven. Both at once. Now we're building towards something here on this channel, and I just want to say it plainly instead of just hinting at it. I think we're closer to real alien disclosure than what we've ever been. And here's why. Multiple governments around the world are now independently declassifying similar material on their own timelines without coordinating with each other. We can talk about this stuff openly now in a way that would have got you laughed out of a newsroom a decade ago. And the number of credible sightings keeps climbing every year, not shrinking. Put that together, the releases, the openness, the sheer volume, and for me, it points to only one thing. Something real is happening and we don't have a full explanation for it yet. And it's getting harder for anyone to pretend otherwise. We're not leaving the mystery side behind. That's still the heart of what we do here. We're just going to start walking towards the bigger picture, one file at a time, and together. And if that's the direction you're interested in going in, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. And that way you can find us when another episode drops. Once again, I'm Mike. Stay curious. And be sure to share what you know with those that are happy to listen. I'll see you then.